everybody. It's Donna Baker, and I am here today to welcome another guest to my Faces of Monrovia project. So if you're not familiar with it, it is a site that is thefacesofmonroviaca.com, and you can go and read a bunch of interviews that I've done with over 100 people who are Monrovians who have interesting stories to tell. A lot of the times my basic goal here is to interview people that you may not have ever heard of, but they're still really interesting people. So I want to focus on people that aren't that well known. And so today I'd like to welcome my guest, Brad Hoggard. Thank you, Brad, for joining me today.
Thank you very much for having me.
So we're acquaintances. We've known each other for many years. I happened to sell one of his homes my first year in real estate, and it was like the inspector broke the water heater and I had to run home and grab a mop and towels so I could clean up the water before you guys found out that he had broken it.
I'm finding out just now.
So that's how I know you at the beginning. So that was, I think, 2002, maybe 2001, when you sold that little house on Stedman, right?
It's in that neighborhood.
Yeah, and then you moved up to where you are now. So let's start out talking about how you ended up here in Monrovia.
It was less expensive than Pasadena.
It still is, by the way.
Oh, is it?
Yes.
Okay. Well, my wife and I were living in a little shoebox rental house in East Pasadena, and we wanted a house of our own, and we couldn't afford Pasadena. And we'd been out to Monrovia a time or two and enjoyed the little downtown area, and so we started looking around here, and we found a nice little house on Stedman, like you say.
Yes, you did. That's adorable.
And thank you. And we moved here, never regretted it, loved it.
So tell us about your family.
Well, my wife and I have been married for a little over 40 years.
Wow.
Her name is Patty. And she and I have two children. One of them is working in Azusa and living there. He has a condo. His name's Mark. And our daughter, Kirsten, is married to a great guy she met in college in Abilene, Texas. And they are now living in Tennessee.
Wow.
Because it's cheaper
less
to live.
expensive.
Yeah, it's hard to find a place you can afford around here.
Yeah,
and,
I feel sorry for young people trying to get started nowadays.
Yeah.
I mean, when I bought my first house, it was $144,000, and that was a fortune, and now they're $900,000. I just don't know how kids do it nowadays without help from their parents.
Well, they got a little.
I'm sure they did. That's what good parents do, right? Ironically, I found out after I had you answer the questionnaire for the online interview that you and I both worked for the same company right around the same exact time. So I was there for a year. You were there for much longer than me. Right. So we worked together at Idea Lab. Right. We don't remember each other. He kind of remembers. Kind of. So tell us about your career and what you do and how I know that you have a degree in journalism, and so tell us about that.
Oh, wow. Well, I've done so many things. I'll try and be brief.
That's why you're interesting.
A friend and I, when I worked for the Star News for a while when it was a real newspaper, and did what they call stringing for the LA Times for a bit.
What does stringing mean?
I'm sorry, stringing is like a contract worker, a contract writer. They would measure the story in column inches with a string, you see, and then they put it on a ruler, 12 inches, okay, you get $12 or whatever.
Oh, okay.
So, anyway, I did that for a while. A friend and I started a little newspaper of our own called Pasadena Journal of Business, which didn't last too long. And he is now, interestingly, the head of a news website called PasadenaNow.com. So he has pursued that. I later started working for Bill. Well, to back up, I met a woman at church who knew I was looking around for other kind of writing things other than journalism, and she invited me to meet Bill Gross, who, as you mentioned, I think you mentioned, is rather an entrepreneur. And so I went to meet him at her house, and he had the computer monitor up and was said, "Hi, Brad," and then he said, "What do you think? Do you think this should go here or over here?" and he just kept talking about that and talking and asking questions about it. And I said, "Well, I don't know. I think that looks better." And finally I said, "I brought a resume," and he said, "Thank you," and he put it in his briefcase, didn't look at it. And on the basis of that, he hired me. I never quite understood why he hired me, but he did.
What was it you were looking at?
It was the prototype of a piece of software called Lotus Magellan. We were doing contract work for Lotus Development, which is the company that did the old spreadsheet Lotus 1, 2, 3. Yeah, there's a few
We're
of us
old
around.
school people, right?
We're
We
old
remember
school.
that stuff.
So it was a great product. I used it for a long time, but yeah, Lotus Magellan, it was a disk navigation system, so you could find things on your hard drive very quickly.
Oh, okay.
So after that, I worked for him at the various companies he started, including Idea Lab, which is, as you know, basically a company that starts companies.
Right.
That's its product, is new
It's an
companies.
incubator.
It's an incubator,
Yeah.
right. Did that and worked for a number of the companies, including one called, Knowledge Adventure, which still produces children's software. And I worked for GoTo.com, which was a search engine that was bought by Yahoo.
I remember that too.
Yeah, and I'm losing track. There's others. But after working for Idea Lab, I kind of retired. And because of my journalism background, I was concerned about what the internet was doing to small newspapers, weeklies. And I thought, where are people going to get their local news? I mean, you can get national, international news all over the place,
Yeah.
but where do you get local news? So I started MonroviaNow.com with the thought that I don't want to write all this stuff, so I'll get some of the leading citizens of Monrovia to write. So I went around and talked to a number of them and explained it and said, here, you have basically a key to post whatever you want. Well, they didn't.
Oh, they didn't.
I got one or two posts, but
Oh.
really not much. So I started filling in for them. Okay, I got to have something here. So it ended up my doing the whole thing. So, but I've enjoyed it. It's been a lot of
Yeah,
fun.
I think a lot of people enjoy reading it too.
Oh,
I mean, it's. I know you have it on a Facebook page now too. So if anybody wants to go on Facebook and look up Monrovia Now, they can read each issue. Each article is there, right? And then you can also go to MonroviaNow.com.
Right. Usually the Facebook posts are sort of teasers, you might say, that hopefully get people to go to the full
Oh, that's
article.
a good way to do it. Yeah. Well, I like the fact that you allow people to make comments too. Do you monitor the comments, or
Yes.
do you I mean, because I'm sure there are a lot of opportunities for people to go wacky on that, right?
There, on both Facebook and my webpage, the posts are allowed. And every morning I'll get up and there's some spammy things, and I just bleep them, and that's part of the job. So.
But we all know that there are rabble rousers, I'll call them for sake of a better word, who always want to talk down on everybody and everything here in Monrovia, and it's such a terrible place to live. And it's like, do you people live in the same place I live? Because I don't see that, you know?
There are a few, and it hasn't become a plague, so I haven't shut them off. And sometimes they have valid points, but I don't want any riots on the website.
Yeah,
so,
right. I would.
And really, I haven't had that much of a problem. I think when people have the ability to post new things, then they post some provocative thing, and then you get a fight going. But the things I post, although I have my own opinions, I try and kind of keep them minimal. I try and just say, okay, here's what's going on. You guys fight about it if you want, but I'm just telling you what I'm seeing and what's happened. And most people don't find that provocative, and so they don't get upset and start yelling at each other. So
yeah, I know I enjoy reading it. I read it every week, and whenever it comes out, I read it. And I like the fact that you pull a lot of the information from other places as well, so that you include. It's very inclusive, I think.
I try. Yeah,
that's good. So I know that people are probably saying, "What are those paintings that are in front of Donna? This is something new." So I've never had an interviewee come in with something to show. But I'm glad that you did, because these are gorgeous. So before I go on to this, what I'd like to talk about is your relationship with Steve Baker. So we all knew and loved Steve, and I think each one of us had, a relationship with Steve that we felt was near and dear to us, and that nobody else had that kind of a relationship. And we were dreaming, right? Because he had touched so many lives when he was with us.
Absolutely.
And so we all have that little piece of Steve Baker that we want to keep near and dear to us. But you guys had a pretty special relationship.
Well, I'd like to think so, but like you say, maybe it's everybody feels that way. Yeah, we actually met. I was showing some of my paintings at a gallery that was on the south side of Library Park. I'm trying to remember the name of it. Siegel?
Yes.
Yeah, Siegel. And so I was there standing next to my paintings on the opening night, and Steve was there, and he asked, he commented on my paintings, and he asked my name and where I lived, and I told him, and he proceeded to tell me the whole history of my house.
Yep.
So that was sort of the introduction, but later I started hanging out at the Starbucks in the Vaughn's parking lot, and he would come by occasionally and get his lemon loaf, always a lemon loaf. And
that was after Monrovia Bakery closed down, because that's where you could find him every morning.
Oh, was it?
Right?
Okay.
Yes.
I wasn't part of that. But yeah, so we would see each other for coffee, sometimes in the morning, sometimes in the afternoon. He'd be there for a lemon loaf. And we just got to talking and got to being pretty good friends. And we'd have these philosophical and religious conversations. And one thing led to another. And when COVID came along, we started meeting on his front porch, which was way wide, and there was another guy named, I'll get to that, Steve, and then myself, and then Kevin Sullivan, that's his name, yeah. We would meet 6 feet apart very dutifully, and we would chat on his front porch, and so we did that for pretty much the entirety of COVID. And we would just had a great time. We would take each other out to birthday dinner.
Steve was always so quick to say yes when cocktails were involved, right?
I think Steve had a real problem saying no.
I do too,
to
for
anything.
Sure. We miss you, Steve. So these paintings, some of them were inspired by Steve, right? So especially this one. So I'm going to show you this. This is a painting of the San Gabriel Mission.
Right.
And so tell the story about this.
It's a bit of an odd view of the San Gabriel Mission, but Steve wanted this particular view. And the reason is because I believe it was his grandmother or great-grandmother had painted this scene, and he couldn't find the picture, and he missed it. And so he asked, he'd seen a few of my other paintings, he asked if I would do it. So he and I went down to the San Gabriel Mission, and I took pictures from every angle, which was difficult because they had the fire and the roof there, and the whole place was surrounded by construction fencing. And scaffolding, so I had to take pictures and try and imagine what it would be like without the scaffolding. And so this is the picture I took.
It's
for him.
absolutely gorgeous. I love it. Could be, I mean, I almost thought of the water reservoir over there on Ivy Avenue next to the Cornwell's house, just
Really?
below
Okay,
Hillcrest. Kind of
yeah.
reminded me of that.
Huh.
So that's beautiful. And then this one, Brad is addicted to telephone poles, apparently. I've seen you post many, many telephone poles. So how did that interest start with the telephone poles?
You know, I don't know. I think it was the texture of the phone poles. When you get up close, you see all the wood grain. And I remember I was mountain biking up near Camp Trask, and there was a telephone pole right near the entrance to Trask, and there was a lizard on it. And I thought, oh, that's a cool picture. I snapped a picture, and so I painted a lizard on a telephone pole, and I guess that started a trend with me. I don't know.
Okay. I love this one. It's very eerie, kind of.
Yeah, yeah.
And then this one, I am fascinated with this one. So, what inspired you to paint a faucet?
Again, that's up in not Canyon Park, but the Wilderness area. There's a little building right as you enter on the Cloverleaf entryway. And that complicated mechanism was there, and I think when I think I need something to paint, I start looking at things with an eye to painting them, and I saw that and I thought, that's kind of complicated and interesting.
It
with
is.
the shadows and the shapes, and so
This is really, really
best I
well
can do.
done. I'm an aspiring painter. I do rock painting, and I'm very whimsical. I could never accomplish anything like this. So I really appreciate when people have a tendency to be good at art, because it's not easy.
Well, I'm not sure I'm good at art.
Oh, I think you
I
are.
think what I do is oil paints, you can just keep painting over and over and over and over until you finally get it to where you're happy with it. So I think a good artist could do it in one pass. I'd take 15 passes to do
Oh, that's
it.
funny. Yeah, so how did you get into art? I mean, what inspired you to do that?
Well, I was at one of Bill Gross's companies, GoTo.com, and some people came by and said, "Hey, Brad, do you want to go skydiving?" And I thought, no, I don't want to go skydiving. But it got me thinking, I ought to try something different, out of the ordinary. So I tried scuba diving, and I liked it, but every time I'd go down under the water, even in the pool in Sierra Madre, I'd come up and I'd be sick to my stomach.
Oh,
And I think it was because I was eating greasy tacos before I went down. But
that could have been it.
anyway, I gave up on that, but I still wanted to try something. And so I saw, I think, an ad for an art class. And I thought, I'm going to take an art class. And Patty said, what? Because I'd never expressed any interest in art, although my mother was a remarkable artist. I'd love to show you some of her paintings, but they were professional.
So it's in your
level.
genes that you have this ability.
Maybe so. So that's kind of how I got started. I took this class and I enjoyed it. a
You
lot.
learned really well, and
Well,
it's
thank
really impressive. I really love this one, though. This is a train station in Hamburg, you said?
The Hauptbahnhof. It's the main train station in Hamburg, Germany. Yes.
And you have an affinity to Germany because?
Well, I was in the U.S. military. I was a tank crewman,
Oh, wow.
and I met a young German girl, and she said, "How come you Americans never learn German?" So I could have said, because you all speak English so well, but I decided I would try and learn a little bit of German, and I started in the military, and when I got out, I decided I'd get credit for it by taking a class and not studying at PCC, and I've just tried to maintain it and kind of grow it ever since, so that's what I've
That's another thing we have in common. I'm also a grad from PCC.
Oh,
It's like, who knew, right? We have all these things in common, and yet we never really had this discussion until I interviewed you And I interviewed you because I did think that you were an interesting guy, not knowing all these other side talents that you have, nor knowing about your relationship with Steve Baker. So I was really pleased when I read your interview. I was like, oh, I used to work there. How come we don't know each other? So that's pretty cool. So what is it that you love about Monrovia that keeps you here?
Wow. I love my daughter, as I mentioned, in Tennessee. I said, why don't you come to Tennessee and live here? And I'm thinking, because the weather is sticky in the summer, it's cold in the winter. After the beautiful leaves fall, there's nothing but black sticks sticking up. It rains a lot.
They have tornadoes too, right?
Tornadoes. There's a lot of reasons I'm not anxious to move elsewhere. So I love the weather. I remember growing up in Pasadena where it was so smoggy you couldn't take a breath. Your eyes watered. But now the air is pretty clear. I mean, some people complain that, oh, the air is so bad in LA County.
Oh, I know. They don't remember those days.
Maybe
like
it is,
do.
but not compared to what it used to
I
be.
mean, I worked in Pasadena. One of my first jobs was in the Hilton on Los Robles, and I worked up on the 6th floor. And we could look out the windows and not see any mountains whatsoever in the 80s. And it was like, it's hard to believe that the air quality was so bad then.
It was horrendous. It was terrible. But so the weather is a big factor. The mountains, I love the mountains. I go mountain biking there quite frequently.
Do you go by yourself, or do you have a group that you go with?
Both. I go by myself when my friends are not available. So.
Doesn't it scare you to be up there with the mountain lions? And I mean, not the bears so much, because I don't think they're inclined to attack people, but man, those mountain lions would scare me.
Well, I think mostly the mountain lions come out when it's not light out, so I don't go in the dusk
okay, good.
or twilight. I try and go during the day, usually morning, sometimes fairly early, but when the mountain lions have gone to bed.
Okay. Well, now I follow a guy on Facebook called Robert Martinez. I don't know if you follow him, but you should.
Oh.
He is a huge wildlife photographer, and he sets up cameras and video cameras way back into the wilderness up in Glendora and LA County, LA Forest. And his cameras are really obscure, and they're like by creeks and things like that. And he gets mountain lions at 10:30 in the morning. Passing through. Yeah, so I don't think they're always sleeping during the day.
Well,
so you should go.
I'm upset.
I don't mean to discourage you from mountain biking up there, but
well, I'd rather take my chances with the bears and the mountain lions than with the cars. That's kind of my thing.
That's true too. Yeah, those guys that go down in a huge line down Foothill on their bikes scare me half to death. I think just if one of them was to make a bad move, they'd all be in trouble.
Well, I saw a guy at the corner of, I think it was Foothill and Mayflower. Somehow he lost control of his bike, and there is or was a mailbox, a U.S. postal mailbox there, and he went smack into it, and I pulled over my car and I ran to say, "Are you okay?" And he said, "Yeah, I'm okay." He got up and took off on his bike again. Maybe young bones, I don't know.
Likely. So, what is your favorite place to go have dinner in Monrovia, or lunch or breakfast?
Boy.
I mean, where do you like to go spend your money?
That's a difficult question because for Monrovia now, I try every week to go to a different restaurant. Yesterday we
And that's
went,
in your Monrovia now, right?
Yes.
You review a restaurant every week.
Yeah, I do. I would say, for breakfast, I would say probably I like 38 Degrees is one of my favorites, although I like Senna. And sometimes I feel just like old-fashioned Italian, and I like Domenico's.
Now, it's got a new owner, though. Has it changed?
It does. I think the only real change I've noticed is a little bit of the decoration, and they seem to be featuring steaks.
They do. I noticed
which I
that.
have not yet tried. So
Kind
I
of
don't know.
doesn't. It's not. It's incongruous to have
Yeah.
steaks and pasta. I think.
Steaks
I
and
don't know.
spaghetti.
Seems weird to me. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a spaghetti house.
Yeah.
Okay, and then for dinner, where is it?
Well, I thought this restaurant was in Monrovia. I'm sad to say, but
Grano.
it's
Oh.
actually it's in Arcadia, but it's like just across the street. And probably not a lot of people know it, but it's the Shrimp House.
Oh, I know the Shrimp House. Used to be called the Shrimp Boat, right?
I'm not really sure what its name is. They've got about 3
It's the Shrimp
signs, and
House
they
now.
all say different things.
When I first moved here to Monrovia, it was the Shrimp Boat. And all
Okay.
they had was fried fish. I mean, it was fried shrimp, fried fish, fried clams, everything was fried.
Well, they've got not breaded, if that's what you mean.
Yes.
Fish as well.
Grilled
now.
stuff now.
Yeah, maybe I'm not sure. Are we thinking of the same place on Peck Road? And yeah, okay,
Same place.
it's old-fashioned, but the service is nice and it's a pleasant atmosphere and the food is good. So if we're not feeling like some special occasion sort of thing, we go there. So,
That
but
sounds
that's
fun.
kind
I
of cheating
need to
because that's in
revisit
Arcadia.
it. I need to revisit it. And then one last thing, because we're running out of time. That half hour goes really fast, huh?
It does.
We have one more thing in common. I noticed on your interview, I went back and reread it today, and you said, "What is the most beautiful place that you've ever seen?"
Oh, Bora Bora.
I have to agree, 100%.
goodness.
It's so beautiful there.
Yeah, the lagoon. I mean, even when you're right on it, as someone who paints, I kind of felt I could take my paintbrush, dip it in the water, and paint blue on a canvas. It was so vivid.
It is. I know. We did Bora Bora and Moorea.
Yeah,
And we
did.
actually stayed in an over-the-water bungalow in
So
Moorea.
did we.
Oh God, what an adventure that was! I mean, we had a little octopus swimming out on under our porch, and it's like everybody should make a trip to the French Polynesian Islands, in my opinion.
I agree. It's one of the most beautiful places, natural places I've been. Yeah.
I agree with you. Well, Brad, we're winding up. Is there anything else that you want to share with the audience or me that I missed?
Well, I just love Monrovia and hope
I think
to be
we
here
all
a long
do.
time.
Yeah, me too. I know at one point we were thinking of selling our house and moving to Pasadena because that's where I worked at the time. My husband worked at City of Hope as a scientist. And we kept going to Pasadena, and then we'd come home and go, why do we want to move to Monrovia? So Monrovians, thank you for joining us for this, I think is my 8th interview in person. You can go to thefacesofmonroviaca.com and read a bunch more interviews from a bunch of interesting people. Brad's interview is there too, so whatever I didn't cover in the interview right now, you can go and find out more about him. Go to the monrovianow.com website and get up to date on all the things that are happening in Monrovia. And if you or somebody you know would like to be featured as a guest on the website, that's where we start first, and then we try to get people to come on camera with us. But if you're interested in being interviewed for the website, you can go to that webpage and hit nominate, and you can nominate someone else, you can nominate yourself, and you can even do it anonymously if you let me know you don't want the person to know who nominated them. So I thank you for joining us again. I thank KGEM again for the wonderful opportunity to be able to feature such wonderful people in Monrovia like Brad Hogard, and I hope that you'll join me on my next edition. Thanks so much.